Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Challenge. And if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli, and it is time for our live stream. Here, as usual, is of course a co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. How are you, Peter? You ready for
Autumn,
another
autumn
exciting
has
live
arrived.
stream?
Autumn has arrived.
Oh, it is. Is it cold?
Oh, it's nice. I like it. I like it a lot. Cool air, breeze, the sunshine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a huge fan because the days are getting shorter, very, very short. And you know what it all means. Winter is on its way, and it's
I
just a
like
matter of
winter.
time.
See, that's it. I just like winter a lot. Yeah. The only
Yeah,
downside about winter is the dogs, of course, and being an owner of two Chihuahuas, they don't like cold weather.
yeah, that's the problem. You've got these dogs that don't have much fur. You know, they can't really cope with the cold weather. You should have invested in one of those um, those hounds. You know, with a lot of.
Well, the bigger the dog, the bigger the place you need. Okay.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. Though, I mean, what are those? I guess those hussies, the ones with a lot of fur. You know, I guess they enjoy winter.
I see. They're very popular here. Oh, they're absolutely gorgeous animals. Oh my God, and they
They are
love
beautiful.
they love the cold weather. That's when they come alive. They're very lethargic in warm weather, but
Well, I would imagine.
the wintertime they're fierce and they're absolutely gorgeous,
Yeah,
and they're very very friendly. They're very kind
yeah,
animals.
they are very friendly. Very friendly. So anyway, Peter, the big news is of the election that took place yesterday in Brandenburg. So we had the elections earlier in the month in which was in Saxony and Thuringia, and the AfD came in first in Thuringia, came in a very close second in Saxony. That was won by the Christian Democrats. And yesterday in Brandenburg, they came in again a very close second. Um, Sergeant Schultz, who is currently in New York for the UN General Assembly opening, sounded happy, largely because everyone was expecting that he could get absolutely trounced, and that the Social Democrats, who have been in power in Brandenburg, or the region surrounding Berlin, that had been in power since the reunification, that they were going to just lose. As it is, they barely clung on, and even then, it was as a result of tactical voting. So there was a lot of tactical voting that went on, with the always the idea behind it, as in France, we have to keep out the Alternative for Deutschland. We have to keep them out, and so you get these lopsided results that don't actually deliver anything for the public, because if you don't have a positive agenda, your only agenda is, well, we got to keep out the AfD, or we got to keep out Le Pen, then you don't really get anything.
Well, George, it's even worse than that. Sergeant Schultz, he can have all his jollies he wants. I could care less. Okay, so he eked out the smallest in margins of victory. Well, that means the AfD won because they're not held responsible for the
No.
governance of those people. Okay,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I mean that's a perfect win for the AfD. I mean, I'll take you take your
That's
wins
right.
when you can. Okay,
That's right. Well,
calling
let's
that
take a look.
calling that a victory is
Yeah,
for Schultz. That shows
that's
how
right.
delusional these people are.
That's right. Let's take a look at some stuff about the election. Let's hope that we can see this time. Can you see, Peter? Oh, you can see it. Wow,
Yep.
excellent.
You
It's
better
very
you need to talk to these people because we need to get our boxes where
right. Yeah, I know.
here
I know.
and not
Yeah,
here. Okay.
yeah. Anyway, so this is the result. So we got the SPD gets this 30.9, AFD 29.2, and then the CDU gets 12.1. Notice the Grüne, the Greens, they don't reach the 5% threshold, so they're not going to get representation in the
Pop the
Landtag.
bubbly, everybody. Pop the bubbly.
and then you got the Linke. They're also 3%. The Free Democrats, who are the permanent feature in every single post-war German government, they got about 1%. That's about 1%. They're always at you everywhere. The Free Democrats, so they can barely scrape through to that 5%. This time they didn't even get to 1%. And then we've got the Sarah Wagenknecht's party that got 13.5%. So that's a party that came from nothing, and 13.5%.
That's a win. The Linke, the left party, that's interesting. This may show that they're kind of ghettoized in the East. We'll see.
Right. Well, that's clearly the issue here. Is that it is about both the AfD and about the Sarah Wagenknecht party, is whether they can move votes in the rest of the country. And then here we have again.
I'm sorry, I just have to say it. The Greens are showing they can't get votes anywhere in the country.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, given how poorly the Greens are performing, that Annalena Baerbock continues to be Germany's foreign minister. I mean, it's getting more and more absurd. I mean, you don't have any support in the country, and yet you're the foreign minister of Germany.
I think
that Germany around the world.
I think there's an opening in Ukraine. She should pitch for it.
Anyway, this gives you a better picture again of the votes. Notice how poorly the Christian Democrats performed. And again, it came in fourth. They came in behind Sarah Wagenknecht's party. And then here we have how the seats will be distributed. Now you can see that together, the AfD and the Sarah Wagenknecht's group, they get 44 seats. And the SPD and the CDU will also get 44 seats. So in other words, the establishment parties have exactly the same number of seats as the anti-establishment parties, which is kind of interesting.
George, in thinking about the election and now looking at the results, this is a resounding defeat for the establishment. Resounding. I mean, and the Christian Democrats here and the Social Democrats, these are the two pillars of post-war Germany, okay, yeah. By any stretch of the imagination. This is just they very publicly have egg on their face right now in a really big way.
Yes, yeah, no, I think so too, and it's clearly a deep dissatisfaction. Because they can, it's in the East and so on, the economy in the East is not as good as in the West and so on. But the economy in the East is not bad. I mean, it's still Germany. I mean, it's not like, they're sort of living, from hand to mouth.
Yeah, it's not Appalachia, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's still Germany. A lot of money was invested in the East. So they're still living pretty well, and they do have a higher unemployment rate than in the rest of Germany, but it's not terrible unemployment rate. It's still pretty decent. So that doesn't explain the dissatisfaction these results show. And now here is the results from 2019, and you can see how much. I mean, the Social Democrats are more or less held their own. But the AfD have done very well. They've really moved up. And then, of course, the Christian Democrats have collapsed since 2019. And then here's this article, which is quite interesting in Politico. It says, Scholz survives as his party edges far-right AfD. And then it goes on. The SPD finished first in Brandenburg, according to preliminary projections, and blah, blah. And then it says, despite the win, exit polls suggest that neither Scholz nor the SPD had much to celebrate. About 75% of those who cast ballots for the SPD said they did so not out of genuine affinity for the party, but rather to prevent the AfD from gaining power. And that's the thing. I mean, if all you have is this negative thing, which is, hey, vote for us because we need to keep out the AFD. That's not a program that ultimately is sustainable. I mean, it just isn't.
And it also, everyone here, I don't want anyone to have a misunderstanding here. I am not a supporter of AFD. I am not. Okay? What I support is forcing these people that believe they have the sole right to power to start reacting to the electorate, to start changing and adapting to the needs of the people. AFD does that. Okay? I'm not endorsing
well,
that.
look, we're not German.
What
It's not up to us to support or not support the AFD. We're not German voters. So the issue is still
That's right.
Yeah.
My point is that what George and I have been, the reason why we follow these elections, I'm not German, George isn't German, but
right, that's right.
We've been critiquing these people that believe that they have a privileged position in power, and we're saying they're out of touch, they need to adapt, they need to adjust, and this is why you get these election results. That's why I'm very happy with these results.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, all right. That's exactly it. Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, the point is that the AFD are expressing dissatisfaction and rightful dissatisfaction with what German politicians have been doing for years. I mean, we're talking about this immigration policy, which has been an absolute disaster. It started under Merkel, and it continued under Scholz. You got the energy policy, which has been a total fiasco. Also started under Merkel, continued under Scholz. Then you have all the policy of the environment, the sort of the green New Deal. Also, that started some time ago, accelerated under Scholz, and that involves, the hitting farmers. And of course, then you have the foreign policy, whereby Germany has got itself sucked into a war that Germans really do not want to get sucked into. So the AFD expresses its real dissatisfaction. And I think it's excellent that I think there should be a political movement that says that something is very wrong with the way the German leaders have been leading the country. And we can't just go back to the good old days of SPD and CDU kind of changing places every 4 or 5 years or every 10, 12 years, because that's just simply, it hasn't succeeded for Germany. And so the establishment parties have somehow banded together and say, we have to keep out the AFD. They don't seem to have any ideas of how to change things, how to move the ball. So let's just keep out the AFD. Let's do whatever we can to keep the AFD out. And that's why I think it's getting worse and worse in Germany.
I couldn't have said it better, George. Keep going.
Yeah. And it's very similar, of course, to what happened in France, because there also they didn't have any ideas other. Well, we got to keep out Le Pen, and then they had that. They did that, and then of course the left said, which quite by a complete fluke after an election that was again a lot of tactical voting, and then the left said, we should be in power, we should govern the country when you haven't won the election. You didn't win the election. And they said, we came out with the most seats. Yeah, but you still didn't win the election. We demand to form the government. And Macron said, nah, I don't think so. And they just formed a completely different government.
Well, I mean, but, speaking of the French elections and Macron, I mean, he wants to be an arbiter of a growing political civil war in France. Well, good luck, France, if he's going to be the arbiter, okay? Because he has no real legitimacy.
No.
I mean, de Gaulle would just say, you and you get in my office right now. Okay.
Right.
What was it? Said there was a famous. The only thing separating you from the being thrown in the River Seine is me. Okay. I'm the only one that can do it. Macron, what kind of legitimacy does he have? He has none. Okay. So, I mean, good luck, France, if you think this is the guy that's going to save your country. Okay. Because he's not. But just to, again, agreeing with George here. Yeah, there are people that don't want don't vote for the AFD because they're a threat. Well, what do we have to lose now? I mean, you people have misgoverned the most efficient, prosperous economy in Europe.
Right.
And the Germans start from scratch in 1945. and reach this
Right.
summit, and it's all being trashed away. And Germans are not stupid people; they're actually very pragmatic politically.
They're very, very, very pragmatic. I mean, it's like, you pick up the Financial Times and you say German auto industry is in real trouble. I mean, and you say, here, the Volkswagen is planning on closing plants. It's never done that. But Mercedes-Benz is also thinking about closing plants. I mean, you talk about their biggest auto manufacturers. They were basically, they're the synonym for, quality products around the world, and they're closing plants. So that's a serious business. Germans look at this, hey, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, this is not good.
And you remember, George, we'll probably introduce to many of our viewers here. Remember Deutschmark nationalism? Remember that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What is it? And tell our viewers, because that's what they deep down in the genetic code of many Germans is what they call Deutschmark nationalism is dissipating. And that's okay. I'll do it. That okay. The Germans, they lost the war. They're unreformed Nazis. The Germans are the Germans. These are all this stuff at them. All of it. Okay. But then, well, they make really nice pens. They make really nice cars. They go on vacations. They live in luxury. That was Deutschmark nationalism. Okay. And now it's just poof.
That's exactly right. And it was always very interesting when from starting from the 1960s on, countries like Great Britain, but then subsequent also the United States, they started devaluing their currency because they needed to make their manufactured goods competitive. They weren't doing well. The Germans had to do it the other way. They were put under pressure. You need to revalue the Deutschmark. Revalue means you have to raise the value. In other words, because you're too good. You're beating us.
Beating the pants off.
You need to actually make your products more expensive so that we can compete against you.
Exactly.
So that was sort of the Deutschmark. So it's always, we have to revalue. It was always the revaluing the Deutschmark because no, you're too good. You're beating us out. You have to actually make your goods more expensive.
And then enter the Green Party, and it got worse.
Yes, exactly. It was a complete catastrophe, the rise of the Greens. And then here we have the SPD. This is very interesting. The SPD was helped by its popular leader in Brandenburg, Dietmar Woidke, whom more than 60% of voters said they viewed favorably. Then Woidke, who has served as the state's premier since 2013, said he would resign if the SPD didn't win the election. And then he goes on, a key aspect of Woidke's campaign strategy was to keep Scholz out of sight. Sort of like Biden, you're going to keep him out of sight. Though the chancellor resides in the state, so that Scholz resides in the state, Woidke banned him from campaign events due to his deep unpopularity. So,
I mean, it's kind of like you would never say that. Kamala Harris has banned Joe Biden. You can't say that in American politics, but in Germany you can say he's banned.
You're banned. and then it says the SPD received an unexpected boost after the premier of Saxony, Michael Kretschmer of the CDU, endorsed Woidke, telling center-right voters it would make more sense to back the SPD and block the AfD than to support the CDU. So this is the CDU. This is the premier of Saxony, the one who just won. He says he told the voters here to say it would make more sense for you to back the SPD. Don't vote for the CDU. Even though you may want to vote for the CDU, don't vote for the CDU. Vote for the SPD in order to block the AfD. And I think that's kind of what did it. I mean, that win, 1.5% or whatever, it was largely because of this tactical voting.
Well, George, if someone told us 20 years ago that's what the Christian Democrats would do for their competitors, we would laugh in their face. But here we are.
Right. That's right. And the unorthodox move by Kretschmer, a popular figure in Eastern Germany, appears to have helped push the SPD over the line, though it also contributed to the CDU's worst ever result in the East.
Again,
So
the CDU is ghettoizing itself. This is what we're seeing, and as we have more elections coming to fore, we're going to see what parties have pull in the entire country, and we're seeing
yeah,
what the parties don't. And the good
that's
thing
right.
is the Greens don't seem to have any pull anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to see the Greens becoming so hated throughout Europe, and particularly, I mean, you got this whole green agenda, which is just absolutely infuriating everybody. You know, people who are paying far more for their oil at the gas pump, and then you got farmers who suddenly their costs have soared, and you got truckers. Everybody is essentially blaming this Greens for imposing this green agenda on Europe, and of course the EU had embraced this. It's not like the EU just sort of didn't do it. The EU embraced this agenda, and and this is how unpopular they are in the country in which the Greens. This is the origin of the Green movement, was Germany.
Absolutely. So this is it appears to be a growing paradigm shift. Okay, I don't know if you can actually say that growing paradigm, but there's major changes afoot here, and good because the establishment parties of it's a beauty contest. They go out there, they go down the catwalk, and nobody's looking, and
That's
their
right.
people are sick and tired. And again, what we saw in France, this tactical voting, where you have unlikely foes joining forces and whatnot,
That's right.
that shows the establishment is bankrupt. Okay.
That's right. That's right. It really does. It's and that's how you do it. This constant thing. And then of course we saw this in in the UK. It's in kind of the UK election where you had Labour winning, a landslide win with the kind of lowest ever Labour vote. I mean, that just shows just the extent to which essentially you don't have any kind of a mandate. It's you just do it through a variety of
Yeah, well,
tactics.
George, it's interesting. The lower the participation rate, the more social tension. We're seeing this here now. And what does that tell you? It's something that is very dangerous, is that more and more people in Europe don't see the electoral process as a means to addressing their grievances. This is bad news, okay?
Right, right. That's right. Now, the other thing that's in the news is, of course, that Israel is launching these bombing raids on Lebanon. So last week we had those. First, we had the attacks via the pages, which supposedly accurately targeting Hezbollah leaders, but which thousands of people were injured and some children were killed. Doubtless they were all Hezbollah fighters, the children who were killed. And then, of course, the next day we had the walkie-talkies being targeted. And then since then, Israel has kind of stepped up its bombing campaign. Then, of course, it assassinated the Ibrahim Akil. And then now today or overnight, there were these bombing attacks. So I assume Israel does not want to get to invade Lebanon. I mean, that's a very difficult, messy situation. You need a big, fresh army to do that. I mean, they've been exhausted fighting for now almost a year against Gaza, against Hamas in Gaza. I doubt whether they really want to go and invade Lebanon and take on Hezbollah. So I'm assuming that they're just bombing, trying to terrorize and intimidate Hezbollah into caving. See, this is what we can do to you. This is how we can make you suffer. Back off and stop you doing what you're doing.
Well, Hezbollah is not going to back off. All right, it's not who they are. Let's put it that way. Okay, look, we may see Hezbollah invade the Galilee. Okay, at some point, or just to prove a point, to be able to go into Israeli territory, hold it for a while, and withdraw. This type of bombing, the way the Israelis do it, they're so infatuated with AI. Is that the targets they're picking in southern Lebanon are based on that? Well, there's a lot of fake missile sites, a lot of fake infrastructure that makes the Israelis think that they're hitting something. They're pounding a lot of dirt right now, okay? And they are killing people, of course, that's true. But in response, Hezbollah has not used its very vaunted high-tech missiles. They have still not done that, okay? And there's a complete news blackout in northern Israel right now. So even most people in Israel don't understand the kind of punishment the northern part of the country is experiencing. And there's a lot of destruction, okay? Hezbollah is not reporting it. Israel refuses it, but there are people in northern Israel that are, taking videos on their phones and they're sending it out and seeping in to the social networks. So yeah, this is a pounding effort on both sides. But I don't see any reason in the world why Hezbollah is going to change its tune, and not at all. And as a matter of fact, everyone, as horrific and unethical the pager walkie-talkie episodes are, remember these. Yes, they got some Hezbollah low-level soldiers, combatants, whatever you want to call them. But the pagers and the walkie-talkies were used primarily by Hezbollah, the civil Hezbollah, doctors, nurses, drivers, and stuff like that. And they don't even have to be part of Hezbollah. But when you're in good parts of, particularly huge neighborhoods in Lebanon, that's Hezbollah runs this place. They do the policing. They fix the roads. Who knows? Maybe they even deliver the mail, because you know what, everyone? There isn't a government in Lebanon. There isn't one. It hasn't been one for a long time. And so you have the civil elements of a social order, getting things. You know what happens if a water pipe breaks? Who do you call? Call your Hezbollah guy. Okay, hey, we got a broken pipe. We got to fix it. Okay, we'll be right over. They don't call the government. The government doesn't exist. Who knows? I mean, what about the Lebanese army? The Lebanese army is essentially a fiction. Okay. And what is there? Are they going to challenge Hezbollah? No, because a lot of members of the Lebanese army are affiliates or somehow joined with Hezbollah. So no, I mean, Hezbollah is not going. And look, anyone, all of you that know the history of modern Lebanon, that it's a small country, small population, but they know how to take punishment like almost no one else. Okay, so no, now this is going to continue. But we can go all the way back to the Second World War, George, and we can talk about Korea, we can talk about Indochina, we can talk about Iraq and Afghanistan. Strategic bombing or any bombing of just about any type doesn't really move the needle here. And the Lebanese have been prepared for this for a very long time, ever since they gave the Israelis a bloody nose in 2006, okay? The IDF was defeated then.
Well, this is where I don't think the IDF was defeated. I think the IDF.
The fact that they didn't win means they.
Well, they didn't win, but Hezbollah didn't win either. I mean, I think, which is why that was almost 20 years ago. Hezbollah has never tried that since then, and Hezbollah has said we took a real punishment then, and we don't want to do this again. And I think even Nasrallah has sort of expressed some regrets about what happened in 2006. So I don't think Hezbollah really does not want another war against Israel. I mean, I think that they really have been going out of their way to avoid any serious war.
Yeah, but a difference is that they can punish, they can hit. I mean, they hit outside of Haifa over the weekend. Okay, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Okay, so I mean, there were people last week saying, Israel's technological edge and all that. Well, yeah, but that's kind of baked in my opinion. But at this point in time, as George and I are speaking, Hezbollah has no incentive to back down. Now, I agree. I mean, this is existential. Either you win or you are obliterated. But that's applying more and more to Israel, too, not to the same level, but it's beginning to. So both sides are going to have to think about that.
Right. Well, we don't yet know to what extent the attacks, the pager attacks, hurt Hezbollah's leadership. I mean, it could well be that a very a very large part of its leadership has either been killed or at least incapacitated, because a lot of people have been injured, and therefore, you may just be permanently crippled, in hospital. So we don't yet know how big a blow this was. I'm not saying this is going to be the end of Hezbollah, but I do think that it was a major blow against Hezbollah. I think
there's no doubt about that.
They did suffer physical, obviously, physical injuries, and I think it is also a loss of morale. I mean, because we more or less expected Hezbollah to be very tightly organized, and absolutely impenetrable, very, very hard to break through. I mean, that was the reputation of Hezbollah. You can't get through. The outer person, and then the second outer person, the third outer person. There's just no way. It's so tightly organized. Well, Israel did this. Now, whether Israel did it or whether the United States was also involved, I tend to think the United States was also involved, but they did do, and that's why I think it was a blow to Hezbollah's morale, and a blow to Hezbollah's reputation. I mean, Israel's very good at doing that. They've always done that kind of thing of just simply not just inflict a kind of punishment against someone, but also to demoralize. Say, look, this is what we can do to you, and we're going to keep doing this. And you're going to, they've been doing that against Iran. Of course, it's a provocation. They're always doing it. They're always trying to provoke a war. But that's a part of that. And I do think that Hezbollah was very lax. They should never have allowed Israel to penetrate the organization the way it did.
Well,
this was a serious penetration.
That's a stretch penetration, but
well, how else could they have got there? I mean, to get to this whole thing, the supply chain, and we still don't really know how it was done. Where it was manufactured. Among whom was this distributed, and at what stage in the distribution process Israel stepped in and inserted the.
Well, I mean, George,
that was done. So,
there's another element too. I mean, it's a militia, it's paramilitary, it's an army. There's a lot of different terms that apply to Hezbollah, but a leader at whatever level on the ladder there, the totem pole, someone steps in, and then someone else steps in. Okay. Why is this happening? Let's be very clear. Netanyahu's policies in Gaza have failed. They have not been able to achieve the goals that they want. Okay. To change the subject, let's look for something else to talk about, and we're talking about it. The assault on Lebanon right now. Lebanon has had. I guess in total, a very, very bad week. And we've enumerated it here a number of times. But about 80,000 people in northern Israel are living in hotels and who knows, apartments rented and paid for by the state. There's no glimmer of hope of them returning anytime soon. Over the weekend, it has been reported up to 2 million Israelis had to seek shelter of one form or another. Okay, because every 3 minutes the alarms were going off. Okay, so this is not a pretty picture for Israel. Okay, they have not got their deterrence back right now. And let me just reiterate, the Lebanese, they know how to take a pounding, okay? And George is right. I mean, Israel doesn't mess around. It doesn't mess around at all, okay? But, I think it was Netanyahu that said over the week, over the last week, he's only come out with one sentences, like maybe they need to understand. That's it, okay? Right. Okay, well, they understand very, very well. Our people can't live in the South, and your people can't live in the North. And you can do the pagers, the walkie-talkies, and you can bomb the hell out of the border, but your people still aren't there. So again, Netanyahu has been thwarted for now.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I remember when the issue with Lebanon was, oh, well, the Palestinians have moved into Lebanon, and that's really where the problem is. We've got the PLO in Lebanon, and that was the story. That was, well, everyone else here likes us, The only problem is the Palestinians, and everyone in Lebanon hates the Palestinians. That was the official story. And I remember reading this constantly. Well, during the Civil War in the 1970s, and then
pre-internet, everybody.
Exactly. That's right. So, everyone hates the Palestinians. They just moved in and caused all these divisions in the country. And then, of course, Israel then invaded in 1982. Oh, we got to get rid of the PLO. We've got to crush the PLO. But that was the rationale. That was the PLO. There was no Hezbollah in those days. No one talked about Hezbollah. No one talked about the Shia. And now you've got the situation that Israel is waging this war against Lebanon. There are no Palestinians there. I mean, no more. There's no PLO in Lebanon, and you're now waging this war against Shia.
There's no Arafat.
Used to be your allies in Lebanon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's right. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday about the this activity of putting these explosive devices into these pages, and a lot of Israel's champions were very eager and very excited and celebrated. Whoa, this is amazingly deft, ignoring, of course, not just the fact that even if the only people using these pages were Hezbollah, you're basically killing, wounding, destroying all the surroundings of whomever you are targeting, and of course, because you don't know whether some Hezbollah leader may be in a cafe, he's on a bus, he may be on a plane, and then and this explodes. You're really inflicting enormous casualties.
Well, what if you're at home and the pager goes off in the kitchen and your daughter says, "I'll get it for you, Daddy"?
Right. That's right.
That probably actually even happened.
Yeah, that's right. But because I remember, when because the Americans have targeted leaders. They've targeted leaders for assassination. They targeted Gaddafi assassination. They targeted Milosevic. They targeted Saddam Hussein. So that's all legitimate. But the problem is that if you do that, well, what if the leader is having dinner with his family? You're going to kill all of them. You've got to kill all the children, grandchildren, friends, whoever might be at the dinner table. So basically there's no proportionality in that. It's not a great idea. And then
not targeted.
Yes, exactly. And then of course it raises the question, well, do you think it's appropriate then for Assad to say, okay, well, I'm going to target the president of the United States. He's the source of my problems. He's the one who's waging this war against my country. I think I'm going to blow up the White House. So while the president is having dinner with his family, I mean, why not? I mean, if you're saying targeting foreign leaders is perfectly reasonable, then why shouldn't others say, well, okay, I'm going to go on for the president. I'm going to take out Keir Starmer.
That's right. Look, if any other country had done this, there probably would have been more or less uniform condemnation. But if you let a country like any country, particularly a country like Israel, off the hook from doing it, then you've legitimized this form of non-targeted terrorism. I mean, right. All of their supporters, that were, I saw some of these videos and just absolutely repulsive. Okay, well, you're condoning a behavior that could come visit you one day. Right. All right.
Yeah.
This is unprecedented. It is very, very dangerous. And so, and then what do we really need the Geneva Convention for? I mean, if that you can make an exception there, then what do we need? We're going backwards, everyone. We're going backwards.
Right.
Okay. So what is the Geneva Convention's worth? They're worth nothing if a country, a member of the United Nations, goes and behaves this way. It sends a signal to any other rogue country, rogue group, rogue whatever, to say, hey, well, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, it's not it's very dubious. First of all, even in its targeting, because you kill one Hamas leader, is going to be somebody else. I mean, over the years, how many Hamas, PLO, PFL be leaders as Israel killed. I mean, each one was supposed to be the decisive
We,
blow.
we, we could we could have a
Decisive
third
blow.
box of the names running for the entire podcast
Right.
of those individuals that were targeted for assassination. Okay,
Right.
I mean, it almost barely makes the news these days. It's so common.
Right. Right. Exactly. Same with this Ibrahim Akil, who's now said to be, he was behind the 1983 Beirut bombings. In the first place, I don't know how anyone can establish that. How do you know this? This was 40 years ago. You haven't conducted any serious investigation, so you don't know whether he was involved in that. But even if he was involved in that, that's 40 years ago. I mean, you can't just sort of start, we killed him because of what happened.
Well, and they dovetail it into Hezbollah. Hezbollah didn't even exist.
Right. Yeah. That's right. It's an and absurd. Besides, there were issues there that were kind of salient. I mean, basically, they didn't want the Americans, occupying Lebanon. America is not occupying Lebanon. Reagan took the correct decision to say we're withdrawing from Lebanon. It was a ridiculous thing to do, to go into Lebanon to support Israel and to support this very narrow government, this Maronite Christian government that they went in for. I don't know why Reagan was persuaded to do this, but then Reagan realized that this is an absolute disaster because we're obviously antagonizing all sorts of forces in the Middle East, and he withdrew.
And George, who do the Maronite Christians support today?
Yeah, that's right. Those supported Israel. But the problem there was, of course, that if you recall, I mean, there was there was the Bashir Gemayel, who was he was the leader of the Maronite Christian militia, and Israel was supporting him. Then of course he was assassinated. Became, you can't just simply say, well, he's going to be this the leader in Lebanon, because that's it's a complex patchwork of different religious sects and ethnic groups and whatever. So you can't just simply go for this. But after they assassinated Bashir Gemayel, then Israel sent in Bashir Gemayel's militia into these refugee camps in Sabra and Shatila, and of course, we know what happened there again. So Israel facilitated this. So there was a lot of bad feeling at the time, and America was there essentially supporting Gemayel and in Israel. So there were reasons why the U.S. embassy was targeted. This wasn't just a random terrorist attack against the U.S. embassy. It was a U.S. embassy and the Marine barracks in Beirut. So why rehash something from 40 years ago? There was a completely different circumstances.
Well, I mean, this is just adding to another layer to justifying these attacks on Lebanon. Okay, I mean, watching some of these podcasts, the Israeli apologists say, well, what is it, why is the Hezbollah doing this? Why are the Lebanese doing this here? And then the response is because of Gaza. Oh, that has nothing to do with it. This is completely separate. No, it isn't. That's why it's all happening here. There is a real thing called the axis of resistance. I'm not sure if they call themselves that, but I go with that term. Right. And they're showing their sympathies. The Houthis are probably the biggest supporters of the Palestinians. Who would have thought, the poorest group of people in the world that went through 2 decades of war, and they're coming out on top here. Okay, so it's all connected. And the U.S. government is the weakest link in all of this in resolving it. Okay, and the biggest enabler of it all. Okay.
We got to get a peace deal done. We got to get a deal done.
Oh, yeah. Oh, George,
we got to get a deal done.
Have you noticed, George, that I haven't heard that lately. 15 minutes ago, it was the biggest thing in the world, and then it wasn't. Okay.
Yeah, but Harris,
Anthony Blinken. I'm still trying to follow up here. We're on, we're the 1 yard line. It's just basic minor details and all. You're a pathological liar. There was never a deal.
There was never a deal. Of course, it was obvious there was never a deal. But I wanted to show you, there was an article in the New York Times by Michael Walzer. Now, Michael Walzer has a specialty of he is this philosopher of just and unjust wars. So he tends to weigh in on whether a war is moral or not moral. He managed to find that the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999 was somehow moral. I mean, he had quibbles, wasn't sure that's exactly the right way to do it, but he thought that this was moral. Well, he didn't get a UN Security Council resolution, should have gone that. But he tends, he's essentially always trying to go the extra mile to find that America's wars are somehow moral, even if, this or that action that America took wasn't exactly moral, but overall the intent, the goal was moral. That's his whole thing of just and unjust wars. So he wrote this op-ed in the New York Times. Let's see if we can find it. And okay. So here we got this. And so he's not exactly happy with this pages. And so it says, have no place in a just war.
But
but notice the way he puts it. He doesn't say, well, this is, that the very fact you're using it is very dubious that you've got a just war in your hands. But somehow, well, the suggestion even in that headline is, well, Israel's war is a just war, and which is what he's saying. It's just that pager bombs have no place in Israel's war.
See, that's why George is really good at doing this, because see the predicate, see the premise that is a just war. Now let's tweak what a just war is. No, see, this is outright propaganda. Look, just the title.
That's right, exactly.
And George does it because we don't have to read it. But
definitely,
is this just paid propaganda?
Right. And so here it says, the exploding pages and walkie-talkies targeting members of Hezbollah in Lebanon were certainly an espionage and technological coup. Notice that coup. Oh, it was a coup. Well, how fantastic. Few people on the spot or reading about them from far away could fail to be amazed. Really? I don't know.
How about appalled? Okay.
Oh, exactly. Horrified, appalled. Yeah. Failed to be amazed. Well, I'm amazed. But the explosions on Tuesday and Wednesday were also very likely war crimes. Terrorist attacks by a state that has consistently condemned terrorist attacks on its own citizens. Well, yes, because it's a terrorist state that regards any loss of life on the part of anyone else, anyone non-Israeli, is perfectly justifiable. It's never shed a tear for any loss of life for anyone non-Israeli. It's only Israeli lives that matter. And it says, yes, the devices most probably were being used by Hezbollah operatives for military purposes. This might make them a legitimate target in the continuous cross-border battles between Israel and Hezbollah. But the attacks, which killed at least 37 people and wounded thousands of others, came when the operatives were not operating. They had not been mobilized, and they were not militarily engaged. Rather, they were at home with their families, sitting in cafes, shopping in food markets among civilians who were randomly killed and injured. So at this point, you would think, okay, well, what kind of a state does that? I mean, who does that? Targeting people when they're with their families. I mean, but that's not where he wants to go. The theory of just war depends heavily on the distinction between combatants and civilians. In contemporary warfare, these two groups are often mixed together in the same spaces, often indeed deliberately mixed together, because the killing of civilians invites moral condemnation. And now we have the war that Hamas designed in Gaza is a grim illustration of the strategy of putting civilians at risk for political gain. So he kind of makes a complete segue here into Hamas design. Did Hamas really design this war?
Well, who designed the open-air prison?
Yeah, exactly. That again, that makes no mention of that. I mean, it's like it's always this very abstract. He creates these abstract moral categories.
Everyone just to put this in perspective, the majority of people living in Gaza, they're occupying an area about the size of LAX in Los Angeles.
Right.
Just think about that. They're using them as human shields. What do you mean?
Right,
Everyone's packed in together.
right,
Yeah, how can you make a distinction?
right,
That land mass and that number of people, it's difficult to fathom.
right. That's right. Still, a military responding to this strategy has to do everything it can to avoid or minimize civilian casualties. Israel claims to be doing that in Gaza. Oh, yeah, okay. Although serious criticism of its conduct there has appeared in media around the world. I guess, yeah, serious. Not to mention a case brought against Israeli and Hamas officials alike at the International Criminal Court alleging war crimes and crimes against humanity, though it doesn't make that there's been a genocide case brought at the International Court of Justice. Um, and then it says, no similar claim of minimizing risk to civilians can be made for the decision to explode the devices. They were not distributed by Hezbollah in order to put its people at risk. This was not a plot to force Israel to kill or injure civilians. The plot was Israel's, and the plotters had to know that at least some of the people hurt would be innocent men, women, and children. Yeah, I thought that.
Yeah, but as George said, there are no innocents in these people's eyes.
No, exactly. They couldn't care less. That's the thing about Israel. All these Ben Shapiros will say, "Oh, there's never been any country in the world that has taken so much care not to hurt civilians." I mean, this is just fantasy. I mean, it's just fairy tale rubbish that these Ben Shapiros and Alan Dershowitz spread. Because they say something so absurd, so patently defiant in common sense that they believe that people are going to accept that. I mean, that really is the theory of the big lie.
Yeah, but
the lie, the more likely is it to be believed.
Yeah, but Dershowitz and Shapiro do accept it. That tells us more
about
them than anything else.
They do, but they think that the public will accept it. I mean, if Dershowitz, with his huge reputation, says no power in the world has taken such care to avoid civilian casualties. And then when he's on with these debates with Norman Finkelstein, then he points, well, this isn't what was found by this organization, that organization. Then when he just went after another, well, they're all biased against Israel. Oh, they're going to say,
they're all anti-Semitic.
Exactly, that's what Finkelstein said at one point. So they're all, so the IMF, the World Bank, everybody, Human Rights Watch, everyone, they're all anti-Semitic. But that's it. So if you make that claim, that Israel is so meticulous about avoiding civilian casualties, then you have to then look at the mountain of evidence that shows that's not the case. So what are you going to say about the mountain of evidence? Oh, yeah, it's anti-Semitic. And then it says, Israel's recent assassinations of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders requires a more complicated, but still critical political and moral response. So let me suck on my pipe and think about this more complicated, but still critical response. These were men actively supporting terrorist attacks on Israel. So you're a philosopher, and you present this just like that, without any kind of supporting terrorist attacks. What makes you say that these were terrorist attacks? They were also targeting military installations,
which Hezbollah has a preference for, and when it particularly over the last year in this cross-border firing, it's not to hit civilian homes or anything like that. It's a hit to base. Or to demonstrate they know where their military intelligence infrastructure is. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Obviously, things happen in war, but I mean they didn't pull a pager walkie-talkie caper. Okay,
that's right. So these were men actively supporting terrorist attacks on Israel, who certainly knew themselves to be targets. I would say legitimate targets. Why would you say they were legitimate? Okay. Of assassins who could be operating from close up or far away. But when a government authorizes the killing of men, it is directly or indirectly negotiating with, such as the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in July. We have to conclude that the government isn't committed to the negotiation success. I guess we can conclude that. Contrary to Blinken and the rest of them, Israel is absolutely committed.
Well, yeah, but everybody, let's be clear here. Let's be absolutely clear here. the leadership of Hamas in Gaza and outside of Gaza, the leadership of Hezbollah in Lebanon, they all know their targets. Okay, they all know that. Okay, the guy that brings you your dry cleaning, is he a target too?
Right.
Really?
But
No,
that's right.
he's not making a distinction here. These people, this is a state of war.
Right.
That's where we are. This is what's been going on for decades. They know their targets.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So that's politically and morally wrong, not only from the standpoint of a large number of Israeli citizens, including my friends in Israel, who are strongly, even desperately committed to ending the war and bringing the hostages home, but also from the standpoint of all the victims of the Gaza war. And then, however,
I wonder who he thinks the victims are in the Gaza war.
That's right.
Who?
That's right.
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
That's very open-ended, isn't it?
That's yeah. And then says, well, let me make a distinction here. Condemning an act of war is not the same as condemning the war itself. Oh, nice. So we're not going to condemn the war. Hamas and Hezbollah are fighting against Israel for an immoral and unjust purpose, the elimination of the Jewish state. So, you just make a statement. You're supposed to be this philosopher, moral philosopher, and you just make this assertion without providing any evidence for it. This Hezbollah is not fighting for the elimination of the Jewish state. I mean, this fighting came in response to what Israel was doing in the current fighting. It came in response to what Israel was doing in Gaza. Was in support of the Palestinians in Gaza. And just to say, the elimination of the Jewish state. I mean, this is where these people just confuse issues by making this kind of a declaration, which is extraordinarily dubious, but they never provide any real supporting evidence. But that's it. They're trying to eliminate the Jewish state, and then of course that leads to the next one. They're anti-Semitic.
Well, I mean, George, if you let's say you're a 50-year-old woman, a permanent resident of Beirut, and you sat down and talked to her. So how many times has Israel bombed Beirut? And she would say to you, I don't have all day to talk to you, Sonny. They do it on a very regular basis. Okay. Israel bombs, attacks, assassinates everyone around it all of the time. Okay.
Right.
I mean, so and for some people that can be terrorism. The Israelis say these are legitimate. The scientists in Iran, is that legitimate? These are civilians. Is that a legitimate target? This what this guy should apply is wares elsewhere, in my opinion.
Yeah. Then he says, long ago, Abba Eban called this the crime of policide. Now, when people bring up Abba Eban, that sort of brings up happy memories of liberal American Jews. They used to love Abba Eban. And Abba Eban was the Israel's representative at the United Nations. He was there right at the beginning, at the founding of the state of Israel. He represented Israel when he was, making all sorts of pledges on behalf of Israel in order to get the UN to invite Israel as a member state. So then he made all sorts of promises. Yeah, we're not going to, we'll find a solution to the Palestinian refugee problem. No, we're not going to take Jerusalem. We accept Jerusalem as an international city. No, absolutely no unilateral moves on Jerusalem. And everyone loved Abba Eban because, I don't know if you remember, he talked, like an Englishman. He absolutely had all the intonations of an Englishman. And so he was very articulate, a very smooth talker, and so kind of a little professorial in his manner. And the liberal Jews in America and in Britain absolutely were in love with Abba Eban. And then and of course they didn't really like all the leaders that came afterwards, all the sort of the Menachem Begins, and of course Israel, Yitzhak Shamir, and of course Netanyahu. And they didn't feel comfortable with them. It's not the policies that they didn't like. I mean, they wanted a smoother public face of Israel, and that was the ideal of Abba Eban. And it's just funny, Walzer puts his name in because I guess some of the people that he's talking to will have fond memories of Abba Eban. And it says, in his day, Israel's enemies were motivated by nationalist determination to reverse the Nakba, the flight of the expulsion of the Palestinians in 1948 from what became Israel. Today, the goal is religiously driven and zealously pursued. I don't know, that this crime has found supporters and apologists in the United States and Europe, often among secular leftists, is even more amazing than the exploding pages. So it is important to distinguish the judgments we make about the conduct of war from the judgments we make about the decision to go to war. In other words, Israel's wars are, of course, legitimate and just, but we can quibble about or this or that action of Israel, which is exactly what he always does. His great moral philosopher, which is he basically justifies the war, and then just to keep his liberal friends satisfied, he's going to quibble about this or that.
Well, isn't it?
Security Council probably shouldn't have bombed this. Wasn't a great idea to put explosive devices here. Yeah.
But do you think this same writer would do a deep dive into the essence of Zionism? No, he wouldn't do that.
No, because he supports it. He basically supports it. He makes clear this is a legitimate enterprise. The people who are against it are the ones who are illegitimate. But it's just that Israel should find other ways of fighting them, which would be more in conformity with international.
Yeah, but what this writer does, he justifies genocide. I mean, it's really kind of remarkable. This would even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, this writer would never even use the word Nakba. 5 years ago, he wouldn't have used it. Now it's common. People know what the word means, okay? So, I mean, why was there a Nakba? Well, was it a Zionist goal to displace the indigenous population? It's amazing.
All right. Yeah. I think this is the end. Anyways, and then we go. So Hamas's terrorist attack on October the 7th was meant to start a war, and Israel's response, though Hamas expected and wanted it, was nonetheless justified. It's hard to imagine any country responding differently. Hezbollah in Lebanon joined Hamas almost immediately by lobbing rockets in northern Israel, continually but also carefully, seemingly intending a limited engagement. In this way, it's been supporting its Islamist allies despite their Sunni-Shia differences without committing itself to full-scale war. But the problem is of course, proportionality. And then you have to say, well, have Israel's actions been proportionate? And now, if you say 1,000 people were killed on October the 7th, and we don't know how many were killed by Israel themselves, by their overreaction to what happened, and how many of their own people were killed by, Israeli helicopter gunships. But we're now talking about 40,000 people in Gaza. There's no proportionality there. And therefore you have to then say, was Israel's response, even if you say it's justified, it's clearly not justified in its absolute disproportionality.
Which, of course, apologists for Israel will never go down that path, obviously.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly. So this is the this is let me think about this from just war. I got to think.
I mean, but George, I mean,
on this.
Yeah, but the cat's out of the bag on this. We have to find a way to justify this. Yeah. I mean, when the premise of the whole article is to try to convince you that genocide is okay, terrorism is okay, all because one country does it. Oh, any other? Oh no, that would be wrong. Okay, this is appalling what these people try to do. I don't know what the impact is on people. I mean, the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal. I mean, they're on life support, and good riddance when they're finally gone.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. All right, let's take a look at some of the comments and questions that have come in. And Cynthia, thank you very much, Cynthia, as always. Thank you for your generosity. And Cynthia says the problem with the clever technology used to lace digital devices with explosive is that it won't remain stuck in a vacuum. It'll be replicated around the world and used in other terrorist attacks. as well as in conventional warfare. Yeah, it happened with drone technology, so it'll also happen with this technology as well. So don't be shocked at all too soon to see Hezbollah using this technology against Israel. The same can be said for Ukraine against Russia, and vice versa. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, it's once you say, hey, this is, you can do this, then absolutely. Now, I mean, we talked before about biological warfare. I mean, and the biological warfare is really about how can we target people using very sophisticated technology, by doing all the sort of DNA mapping and so on, so that we specifically target a certain group of people. So it's not like
biolabs in Ukraine.
Exactly, and that's why they've invested in this. But of course, the problem there is that everyone else is going to invest it, because no one's going to just allow, hey, one side is going to use this biological warfare, but we're not going to go down that path. And biological warfare, has that ingredient in it, which is that it's not like nuclear weapons. The problem with nuclear weapons is precisely there's all this sort of the radiation. You're always going to be hurt. You'll be hurting yourself if you use nuclear weapons. But biological weapons, at least that's what people like to think, will can be specifically targeted without hurting the one who actually releases them. So this is very similar to that. Hey, well, we can do this. We can make this very, very specifically targeted, and nobody else is going to do it. Well, of course they're going to do it. Of course, absolutely. Once the cat's out of the bag, then everybody's going to go ahead and do this.
Well, and that's why during the First World War, when particularly on the Western Front, all sides used chemicals, and then they all realized not a good idea.
Right.
The wind can blow the wrong direction and things
Right.
like that. I mean, that's why it wasn't used in the Second World War. Okay.
No.
It was just like, this is not a good way to go. Now, there's always the dream. Technology will solve everything. It'll all be very targeted. Okay. That's a pipe dream. That's ephemeral. Okay. In thinking. And so that's why most countries just say, hey, look, we don't really need these things, because if you have them, then you might be victims of them from another side.
That
brings
right.
that escalation. Well, they've got them, we've got to get them. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's always the case. And the moment, I mean, Israel, this is a fantastic coup, which means that everybody is already in on this, saying, hey, well, why not? And then, of course, you can have any other devices. You obviously, using phones, using your computer, sending some signals to your laptop, or, everything. I mean, you go, okay, great, we're going to use this technology. How fantastic! But then others are going to say, hey, well, we've got to work on this technology. We got to send these signals through onto people's.
Yeah, because the more sophisticated your society is, the more you're susceptible to such an attack. So all these people that are so gleeful about what happened last week, I mean, if you can use a pager to kill a child and get away with it, well, why don't you just through electronic signals, why don't you just nuke the Federal Reserve, which might not be a bad idea, but but I mean, just an entire sector, like poof, okay, right. Just take it up to another level. See, the first time George and I talked about this, was I expect bad people to do bad things, but
Right.
if you allow something as despicable as that as being respectable, or you try to rationalize it, you just know how worse things are getting.
Right. No, that's right. And of course, we talk about the 9/11 terrorist attack, which of course were horrific. But one of the targets, nonetheless, was the Pentagon. Now, if you're going to use this logic that anything that was being done by the military, by the U.S. military, is a legitimate target, then yeah, why not just attack the Pentagon and say, yeah, but what about all the secretaries and the administrative people, the people, the kitchen staff and everyone else? Well, them's the breaks, But we were targeting the Pentagon, which is the headquarters of American military. So we say, hey, well, that's a legitimate target. Too bad about the kitchen staff, and too bad about all the secretaries and receptionists who are also killed. But that's the way. But both the Americans and the Israelis are always very happy to justify this kind of collateral damage. Same with when they bombed the RTS station in Belgrade, when again 16 civilians were killed. The civilians who were killed had nothing to do with Milosevic's propaganda machine. There were makeup artists, technicians, cameramen, sound crew, again, receptionists, secretaries. These are the people that you killed 16 people. What did they have to do with this? You have to go right into the heart of the Milosevic military machine. It's so ridiculous when they start talking along those lines.
Well, let's see what happens, George, when the shoe is on the other foot. Okay, you know what, everyone? It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, that's right. And then, anyway, Cynthia then asks, unfortunately, it may even get to the point where even ordinary folks such as ourselves will have to have all of our digital devices screened for explosives before purchasing and using them. The repercussions from this technology will be utterly deep and vast, and Israel should have thought of that before unleashing it upon the people.
Everybody, George and I, as we were coming up, we never knew what the TSA was because there wasn't such a thing. If you had a ticket, you can get on an airplane. You didn't even in America, you didn't even have to have ID. All you had to do is show your ticket. Remember those days, George?
Yep,
and you get on the plane, and you sit down, and when you look forward to the captain's to the cockpit, the door is open.
Right.
You can go up there and say, "Hi, Captain. How you doing? How you doing? Enjoy your flight." Yep. The door was open the whole time.
Right.
Yeah,
no, that's right.
And then, of course, the point that was being made there is that, and now look what happens. You get randomly frisked by some creepy person at the airport.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But again, I mean, it could be anywhere, because so what's you're going to have these security checks when you're getting on a bus, when you're getting on a train, when you're going into a supermarket, because if your device can be used as an explosive, as a weapon, something you're carrying, your phone, your laptop can be a weapon, then ultimately you'll have exactly the same kind of security that you have at airports now at bus stops.
But what makes it worse, George, is that these people are made into involuntary suicide bombers. I mean, it's one thing to put a vest on you, a bomb vest, and you go into the metro, because you want to do that. But what about the person that just has no idea what they're carrying?
Right. That's That's right. That's exactly. That's the involuntary suicide bomber. Anyway, thank you very much, Cynthia. Thank you for your generosity. And Steve K9 says, Israel has appointed a governor for Gaza.
Yep.
I don't think we have to wonder about the plan, although it has been obvious for quite some time. West Bank is a longer-term issue, but still the same goal. No living Palestinians anywhere inside Greater Israel. Of course, what exactly comprises Greater Israel, we are not sure. More likely, a long-term outcome.
Well, I think Israel is the only country in the world, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. It's the only country in the world that is a member of the United Nations who does not define its borders.
Right. But this is an interesting question, because, the Israel's apologists, the Dershowitzes, the Ben Shapiros, they say, well, the problem is the Arab states, Israel's neighbors, refuse to accept Israel's existence. That's the only problem. If they were to accept Israel's existence, the wars would end tomorrow. That's the only reason. The wars would end tomorrow, and everyone would live happily ever after, planting olive trees and whatnot. So, but let's imagine, right? Let's imagine that happened. That every single Arab state said, you know what? Okay, we accept Israel's existence. Would everything come to an end? Well, of course it wouldn't come to an end, because
No,
Israel
it could even get
finished
worse.
agenda.
It could even get worse because, okay, you recognize the state of Israel, but Israel turn around and say, but you're on our land.
Right.
Okay.
And that's exactly right, because of course, if you turn around, let's say the Arab states, yeah, we recognize Israel, but then they say, but we only recognize Israel in its pre-1967 borders. I say, well, that's not good, because that's not an Israel that we in Israel recognize as the final borders of Israel. So, but that's the only condition. So obviously, if countries like Saudi Arabia and all the rest of them said, yeah, okay, we recognize Israel, they'll only say only within the pre-1967 borders. But let's say if they even went further and say, okay, we accept Israel's the borders of Israel. They're right now, currently, whatever it is right now, we define it as Israel's final borders. Israel will still not stop fighting its wars, because Israel would still say, we got to solve this problem. We got to get rid of this of the Palestinians. So it's a total lie to say, oh, the only reason why we have these wars is that the Arab states refuse to accept Israel's existence.
Well, and there's
hasn't been true, incidentally, for about 60 years.
Well, look at the Saudi proposal, I think 2002, where Saudi Arabia, of all countries, said, look, okay, the Arab as Muslim world will recognize the state of Israel, but you have to give the Palestinians a state. Okay? No, can't do that. And, you talk to some real hardcore Zionists. It's very touchy to say from the river to the sea, right? Well, folks, I got some news for you. There are some that say the river to the sea means essentially from the Nile to the Euphrates. Okay, that's a pretty big chunk of land. Okay, but there are those that say that is historic Israel.
Right.
That means a lot of other countries, and that's part of Saudi Arabia.
Right. But then, okay. But then you supposedly say, okay, well, let's say you move the Palestinians out of the West Bank and Gaza, you throw them all out. Okay, then that's the next step. Would that be the end? Would that say, okay, now we have peace? I don't think so, because I think Israel has further ambitions than that. I mean, the Golan Heights would be, of course, another thing that Israel would have to insist upon as being a part of its territory. So you have to then wonder what then would be the final agreement upon which there will really be peace. And they say, well, we don't know, because Israel's demands continue to
well, then of course,
or at least Israel has never exactly spelled out what its final demands will be.
Well, if you define it as a religious conflict, then you have to vanquish the Muslim world. Okay, I mean, this is absurd. Okay, but I mean, the appetite comes with the eating. Isn't it true? I mean, let's say you got the West Bank, you got Gaza, then what's next?
Right. That's exactly.
And the predicate of the question, a governor of Gaza, yeah, it looks like, and it's been happening, is that fanatical settlers have been going into Gaza and putting down a flag saying, this is where we're going to build our condominiums. Okay. Now there's been some tussle with the IDF and whatnot, but the IDF has always been very passive, if not active, in supporting them. But I mean, it's sending a signal that, well, northern Gaza, I mean, this place is as big as a postage stamp, everyone, and now they want half of that. Okay. And if you look at the recent history of governments in Israel, they are very, very these very hands-off approach to these radical settlers, okay? Because they're voters. They vote for the right-wing parties.
Yeah. Now I agree, and I think that's why it's so dishonest. And this is what the Ben Shapiro's and all the rest, put out, which is the only reason we don't have peace, is that the Arab states refuse to accept Israel, despite all of the evidence that the Arab states have been willing to accept Israel, but they cannot just simply abandon the Palestinians. I mean, no Arab leader can just do that and say, well, we just basically do what you want with the Palestinians, apart from anything else. That would be a problem that essentially Israel would dump on them. I mean, if you're going to start throwing
Yeah.
out the Palestinians, well, who's going to look after them? Who's going, Israel is not going to do it. Israel is not going to, shell out a penny, to rehouse the millions of Palestinians that they would throw out. So it's a burden on them. So that the Arab states are saying, well, we can't possibly do that. We can't possibly accept an Israel without some kind of a just solution to the Palestinian problem. And Israel, has always said, basically has never. I mean, Israel has been very clever in the way it's manipulated Western public opinion to suggest that the obdurate ones are the Arabs. The Arabs are the ones who are being unreasonable.
Look, number one, no Arab leader wants to be known as aiding and abetting ethnic cleansing and genocide. That is an untenable one. As unpopular as the governments are in Jordan and Egypt, which are complete supplicants of the United States, those people will rise up. I mean, that is completely unacceptable. Number two, okay, let's say push all the Palestinians in Gaza into the Sinai. Okay, is that problem solved? No. Then Israel will say, no, they're on our border in the Sinai. We have to take care of that. There are terrorists there. Then they just keep moving and pushing and pushing. Okay.
Right. Yeah. No. That's right. I mean, that's the way it has always been. And again, we have to go back even in the days of NASA. At that time, they weren't even talking about a Palestinian state. The only thing that NASA insisted upon was a just solution to the Palestinian refugee problem, which goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, was when Israel was invited to become a member state of the United Nations on the condition that Israel addresses the Palestinian refugee problem. That was the condition. That was it. You have to address that, and that never happened. There's a UN General Assembly resolution, I think it's Resolution 181, that talked about the solution to the refugee problem, and that never happened. And that was all that the Arab state demanded then. So but by 1982 it was just talk about the Palestinian state. But Israel has all along rejected any of these plans, but it's clever enough to always suggest that it's the Arabs who are the refuseniks, the ones who don't.
What is it, George? It's too complicated. Right. Go back. It goes back to primordial times. Right. We don't have a partner to negotiate.
We're not a partner to negotiate.
All of these bumper stickers, all these bumpers. We were brought up with it. Leon Uris. Okay, that's
Leon Uris.
It's Leon Uris propaganda.
That's right. That's right. There was one other thing that I wanted to bring up. Is Jill Stein. So Jill Stein was the leader of the Green Party. She went on the show with Mehdi Hassan, who I think Max Blumenthal rightly calls a bottom feeder. I think it's a very good term. A bottom feeder is someone who basically doesn't have any original thoughts of his own. He basically tries to exploit other people's problems, other people's vulnerabilities, anything that's bad for others. I mean, that's what Mehdi Hassan does.
Well, and bottom feeders, they eat the garbage at the very bottom.
Exactly.
No one else wants to eat. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. That's what they do. So it's like, it's always try to, attack somebody, try to humiliate somebody. That's Mehdi Hassan. Anyway, she came on. And of course, Mehdi Hassan was supposedly so pro, the resistance to Israel. Of course, launched into.
He wants back in the club.
He wants back in the club. Exactly. He launched into an attack on Putin and suggesting that Jill Stein has been a supporter of Putin's. And then, of
I
course,
met Jill Stein when she was here in Moscow.
that's right. That's right. She was at that
Put that
dinner.
on my rap. Put that on my rap sheet.
Exactly. That's right. She was at that dinner.
Yeah.
Which Michael Flynn was at. And,
Michael Flynn was there. I saw him
that's
too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, she was a supporter of Bashar al-Assad. She really didn't acquit herself terribly well. Mehdi Hassan, whatever else you can say, he's a smart guy. He knows how to trap people and to put them in a difficult position, and that's what he was about. Anyway, she really didn't acquit herself at all well, and then she issued a statement as a kind of explanation of her position. So, just want to show you, well, I think she said a lot of nonsense there. Very, very damaging, I think, to her, because she made a lot of concessions that she really shouldn't have done. Again, here's the she says, okay, after it, and it's a slightly small lettering, unfortunately. Can you see it? It's a little small. You have to get your magnifying glasses out. After a recent interview which did not provide the opportunity for nuanced and serious discussion of important and controversial topics, we want to take this opportunity to clarify our stance on key issues, particularly any misunderstandings regarding our comments about Vladimir Putin and Bashar al-Assad.
Oh,
our
geez.
campaign condemns both Putin and Assad as war criminals. So right away, she makes this ridiculous assertion.
I'm surprised you didn't say, and we condemn Hamas in the first sentence. Okay.
Responsible for immense suffering and devastation. Putin's military intervention in Syria, supporting Assad's brutal suppression of the Syrian people's uprising, is a stark example of his disregard for human rights. Just absorb that. Putin's military intervention in Syria, supporting Assad's brutal suppression of the Syrian people's uprising, is a stark example of his disregard for human rights. So, first of all, he was, we don't have to go through the history. He was there at the invitation of the legitimate government of Syria, but the goal was not to oppress anyone. The goal was to defeat
ISIS.
And
31 flavors of jihad. Okay.
Exactly, the 31 flavors of jihad. That was all. That was never, Russia made very clear that they had no interest in, sorting out, the domestic issues on Syria.
People like Jill Stein. I'm glad she's being a foil. Okay, it has nothing to do with if I like her or dislike her policies. I don't actually know very little about her policies, but she's a foil and she's hurting the duopoly. Good, I'm all for it. Okay. Other than that, I don't have much to say about Jill Stein. Other than Jill Stein and your people, why don't you just when you write up something like this, maybe you could just send it to Peter and George, just a quick look, okay?
Right.
Some pointers, okay? Because this is like a nosedive into a garbage dumpster,
right.
Okay? I mean,
right.
Like, how can I help you? I mean, how can I possibly help you? Who wrote this for you?
That's right. That's it.
Because
That's right.
obviously you don't know the history. That's why you're putting out this, okay?
Right.
So why don't you talk to somebody that actually does know the history?
But it's just amazing. To go on the show with Mehdi Hassan, and then you go and issue this statement, essentially completely undermining the whole kind of all the things that have been said about Syria and everything, all about the fight against the terrorists, the jihadis in Syria, by suggesting that somehow that fight against the jihadis was about Assad's brutal suppression of the Syrian people's uprising. So you're legitimizing these jihadis by saying this is the suppression of the Syrian people's uprising. It's a stark example of Putin's disregard for human rights. Oh, and the head choppers, they were regarding human rights. They were all for human rights.
And
I mean,
Jake Sullivan told Hillary Clinton that,
yes,
we're
we're,
ISIS's Air Force is
that's right. We're
our Air
exactly
Force.
we're on the same side as Al Qaeda.
We're
That's
on the
right.
same
Yeah,
thing. Go to
that's
the
right.
WikiLeaks, everyone.
That's right. It's in the
Jill Stein,
WikiLeaks.
do you know anything about WikiLeaks? Have you heard about
That's right.
this?
That's
A
right.
man, sacrificed a good chunk of his life to make sure
Yeah.
people like you could actually read that.
Right. That's it. And then she goes on, as advocates of peace and human rights, we condemn all war criminals, including Vladimir Putin, Bashar al Assad, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney. Oh, I'm surprised she just stopped there. Why not go, go to, and Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and just keep going.
Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah, everybody.
John
Listen, everybody.
Adams. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
and Mickey Mouse. Okay, go
and
ahead.
Mickey Mouse, and first of all, it's so ridiculous, this kind of both sidesism. Oh, I'm against everybody. I'm not. I'm not. And that just shows. I'm on the side of the angels. I'm a good person. I'm against Putin, and I'm against George W. Bush. I'm against Saddam Hussein, and I'm also against Dick Cheney. That is so lazy. It's so utterly feeble and pathetic. And you think this is the leader of the Green Party, and she has really led the people who vote for the Greens completely astray with this kind of nonsense. She's been posing as this anti-war, non-interventionist, anti-interventionist. Cares so much about the human rights of Palestinians, and then you write this kind of rubbish. And then we condemn Benjamin Netanyahu in the strongest terms for his ongoing atrocities in Gaza, which amount to genocide and war crimes. His actions, enabled by U.S. support, demand immediate and uncompromising accountability. And then, ongoing U.S. support for genocide in Gaza, and the long list of U.S. wars since World War II underscore the continuing relevance of Martin Luther King's observation that our country is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. But I thought you listed all those other people. What about them? I thought Putin and Bashar al-Assad, were among the great purveyors of violence. And then while we strongly condemn the actions of these leaders, we also recognize the importance of diplomacy. The urgency of current global conflicts and the rising threat of nuclear war make dialogue essential, even with those who believe we have committed grave crimes. And then again, as President Kennedy wisely said, let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate, and so on. But the reason I wanted to point this out is how useless people like Jill Stein are. I mean, if you go along and just simply say, "Oh, well, I'm against Assad, but I'm also against America waging this war against Assad." I mean, what is it ridiculous? I mean, in the one hand, first of all, you're not living in Syria. You're not a citizen of Syria, so therefore, the whole issue whether you think Assad should or should not be in power in Damascus is not up to you. But nonetheless, it was the legitimate government of Syria who asked Russia for assistance in fighting against the jihadis, because the jihadis were threatening to take over the country.
And he knows that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, but I just want to show this. This is,
but see, this is the result. This is what you get. You get political, historical illiteracy. She's illiterate. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And right. You know what? That was by intention. Okay. Yeah. It's complicated. Okay. Both sides. There's the middle is it. The truth is in the middle.
That's right. Yeah.
All this is nonsense. I hate when people say that. It's
that's
like,
right.
No, most of the time it's really clear who's in the wrong. Most of the time.
Right. And then once you've done that, once you've accepted that, then of course other people are going to use that and say, well, even Jill Stein has said that Putin's a war criminal. That's it. That's what they're going to. Oh, even Jill Stein, the leader of the far left, radical, extremist party, has said Putin's a war criminal. Even Jill Stein, the real extreme wild person,
The
even
real
for her,
alternative.
Putin is too
The
much.
only alternative.
The only alternative, exactly. Wow, God, Putin must be in a really bad way if even the far left party of Jill Stein is disowning her. So this was happened. She went on Mehdi Hassan. Always a bad idea. You don't go on his show. He is a bottom feeder, and you're not gonna come out well from it.
Well, and he's being a supremely dishonest. I mean, as much as I don't like him, as George has already said, he's not dumb. He's a pretty smart guy. But and he knows the history of the proxy war in Syria. He knows it very well, actually.
Right.
And so he will lie to his viewers, lie to a person he's interviewing, just to get back in the club. I really want my job back. I really want my job back. I paid my penance. I've gone after Jill Stein for you. What else do you want me to do? It's true. It's all true. What
I agree. It is all about how do I get back into the club, and how do I get back and be among all these. I mean, he had a show on MSNBC. I mean, he didn't have a primetime gig in the way that Joy Reid has Rachel Maddow or other, but he still had a gig at MSNBC. He doesn't have that anymore. And
going out on his own really hasn't gone as he had hoped.
No,
okay.
No.
I mean, Cuomo tried to go out and it failed, so he had to go work for, I don't know, Air America, whatever it's called. I don't know. I don't watch any of that stuff. But I'm going to be like Tucker. I'm going to be like Megan. Okay, which have done very well. Both of them have done very well, but not this guy. No, because he's a pretty toxic guy at the end of the day.
He's toxic,
and you never know when to believe him.
Right. No, I agree. He's not an appealing figure, and Chris Cuomo really never had anything going for him other than his name. The son of the former governor, the brother of the current governor. But he never had much of a TV personality. It was just
it was Fredo.
Exactly, and of course you dealt with him.
Yeah, it was really quite hilarious. I mean, when it was all over, it was about MH17, and
that's right.
I remember leaving the studio, and I got a call. I think it was from my boss, or maybe from his boss. And how did it go? And I said, well, I didn't lose, that's for sure. And by the time I got to work, about 30 minutes later, there was already an article in Politico about it.
Right.
That's how fast people reacted.
But what was interesting about that is he was doing what these kinds of interviewers do, which is not, hey, well, let's find out what the hell's going on. What's the Russian government saying, and how credible is it, or anything. He went after you. He kind of attacked you. And they kind of.
Oh, the first question was, why hasn't Vladimir Putin sent his condolences? And I didn't like. Why are you asking me?
They always do that. What exactly?
He didn't say anything to me at breakfast this morning. Okay.
Right.
I mean, why are you asking me? I'm a journalist. Okay.
Right.
Why don't you address that? I'm sure there's make a cold call to the Kremlin and get a reaction. Why are you asking me? See, guilt by association. That's what they want to do. And I just push back. I don't know. Why are you asking me?
Yeah. No, it's the guilt by association. And then he kind of takes you to be an apologist for the Kremlin, as if somehow you're defending or championing the Kremlin. I mean, it's like to say, well, hey, why don't you condemn this? Or, why aren't you condemning this? Or it's always in this way of, when did you stop beating your wife? I mean, that's absolutely asking questions.
The upshot of that whole saga is the next day, after CNN put it on YouTube and went into social media, I whipped his ass in the comment section, big time. I mean, people still come up to me in the street and oh yeah, I remember that too. Okay, I mean, I don't think about it at all. But the next day, Chris Cuomo's producers contacted RT, and he said, we'd like to interview you again. And I said, I'd love that, but you have to come on my program. I was on
Right.
your program. Now you have to come on my program. Oh, we couldn't do that. I said, well, why not? Well, we just can't do it. I said, but I can come on your program, but you can't come on mine. What about a little bit of symmetry here?
No,
And
you're absolutely. That was,
and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
It was pre-bow tie days.
Yeah, but that was It's a little like Kamala Harris. Hey, let's have another debate. Let's do it on CNN auspices. Let's do that. And then Trump said, yeah, but I had already invited you on a debate on Fox News. You didn't show up. Now I'm supposed to show up again for a debate that is obviously going to be hostile to me.
The funny thing was, when the interview after it ended, and I couldn't see, in television you call it output. I couldn't see the broadcast. Okay, so I was just staring into a camera, but he could see the output. He could see me, and the main producer at CNN's office there, when it all ended, she says, you know how to dish it back, don't you? And I said, you think so? And she said, you did a pretty good job. Okay.
Right.
But CNN people, I just don't trust them. Okay.
No.
I
mean,
did she want me to say something to the media afterwards, give me a false sense of hope or believe? So I just like, okay, lady, you're CNN. I don't trust you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. I've spent 20 years in television. And that's what I'm going to be remembered for. It seems like. And but John Mearsheimer, and I had
Steve Cohen.
Stephen Cohen. Yeah. That was a really great moment too. Really.
Yeah, that was a really good show. But yeah, I mean, but that's it. I mean, Chris Cuomo really didn't have much of a television personality. Just didn't have it. There was he had no appeal in the way that you can see someone like Megyn Kelly has an appeal.
Oh yeah,
Tucker Carlson has an appeal. Sean Hannity again. We don't really like Sean Hannity, but you have to say he knows how to do a TV show.
Throw the football. I've always thought Sean Hannity throwing the football to his live crowd, it's like throwing fish to seals. It's really weird.
Right. Yeah. So let's take a look at some of these. Gaggle says the Greens have been the harbingers of decline, not just in Germany. Agreed. The same applies to Austria. Not as bad, but still. Yeah, no, I think the Greens have been terrible.
Amen. I agree.
Everywhere. They're a real pain. Yeah. And let's see. So Bustelo Maserati says, sadly, the German people have been stripped of their Westhauptian spirit. They are in austerity and indigence phase. I think Germans have generally had to shed everything about their Germanness, their pride in who they are, in their history, and they have to go on wearing sackcloth and ashes and espousing every kind of fashionable liberal nostrums. Mostly
when you think about it, everyone, George and I have discussed this before. Let's just pick a date, 1925, 1930. Cinema, German cinema was big in the world, really big. Okay, music, really big in the world.
Literature, the leaders in music.
I mean, across the board, it was a cultural mega power.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the moment you start thinking about, okay, well, who are the major post-1945 German literary figures? Well, I say, oh, well, Heinrich Böll and Günter Grass. But that's going way back. I mean, that's really, you're going back to the 1950s and 60s. I mean, it's hard to think of anyone, since then who have been major literary figures in the way that, let's say, the Germany between the wars and the Germany before that. You can think of, the names just spill off the tongue of how many major German literary figures there were. I mean, and then so all of that.
One of the sad ironies of it all is that if you look at pre-war World War II, Eastern Europe, it was Eastern European Jews all through from the Baltics all the way down to like Bulgaria. They look to German culture as being very superior, because you have to remember, a lot of these countries just suddenly came into being. They didn't treat their minorities very well. Not one of them did, with maybe the exception of Czechoslovakia, but then the Germans would disagree with that. But the Germany was a magnet for culture for Eastern European Jews, because for someone that is a lawyer or a doctor and all that, and all of a sudden you're in a place called Slovakia. What's that? Okay, what is it doing for me? Also, okay.
Absolutely. Not to mention all the Germans who were living in Eastern Europe, like Franz Kafka, who the Czechs kind of appropriate to themselves.
Yes.
And so he lived in Prague. He wrote in German. He was a German Jew.
Who's the Polish writer? I mean, he wrote like in Yiddish. He's he's considered a great Jewish writer. What's his name? But the Poles appropriate him too.
Right.
Philip Roth.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely. But that's right.
And Kaczynski, Jerzy Kaczynski.
Jerzy, exactly.
Everyone calls Jersey. His name is Jerzy.
Yeah. There was a guy, the one who wrote in Yiddish, and he lived in America.
On the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Everybody, it sucks getting old.
That's right. Yeah, it's that's the one that hits you, is that it's names, remembering names. It's just mine just goes blank. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes time, I'm going to remember. But
that's right.
I can't.
You know why, everyone? Because it's going around. It's going around, and you're searching for, even though you're not consciously thinking about it, it's in there. It's not like we got to solve this problem.
Exactly. It's like if you're in a library and you can see all the books, but it's too far away. You can't distinguish the title that you want.
Who was the German guy whom was running eugenics schools in America? I don't think you needed a German to do that. It was quite indigenous.
Americans were very much into eugenics, and indeed, I mean, and Hitler himself was a great admirer of American eugenicists. Because he thought that, hey, this is exactly the right way to go. Just as he admired America's immigration policy, which is, hey, we're just going to take all the best from Europe, not going to take anyone else.
You can always get some popular culture from us too, because there was the Nick, the serial series that came out about a hospital in New York, which I think is extremely good. And I think it was the last scene where they had the bigoted doctor that hated the brilliant African-American doctor that had been educated in Europe. Okay. Right. And the last scene is saying, he was a eugenicist. He says, I think we ought to go to Germany. I think it'll be very receptive there.
That's it. Yeah.
Just apropos what George said.
That's right, exactly. And I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes. I think, wasn't he, it said something like, I don't know, 5 generations of idiots is enough. Or I know he has some great phrase that when he actually basically justifying sterilization, he said something, 5 generations of idiots is enough.
Yep.
Eugenics
there's still an undertone of it. Because you can't say the word anymore. It's been retired and it's been verboten and all that. But there's still, parenthood.
Absolutely, exactly. It was very much Planned Parenthood was very much exactly. And incidentally, almost all billionaires who they always embrace the one issue they always embrace and have done for centuries is basically birth control. That's always the thing that, whether it's a Rockefeller or Gates or everyone else, Soros, it's always birth control. It's basically eugenics is
and everyone. I wish I knew we were going to talk about this, but you say an idiot, an imbecile, everybody thinks these words are synonymous. No, at one time they were very specific categories.
Right.
Okay, you wouldn't just say, he's an idiot and he's an imbecile and all that. But someone that used that terminology would say, well, why would you say he's an idiot and he's an imbecile? Okay, because there were very strict categories, and the eugenicist people did that. I mean, they had their entire nomenclature about birth control.
No, because that view was, hey, these people are a net drag on society because it costs money to look after them. They can't, support
themselves.
And
they reproduce.
And they reproduce, exactly. So there's going to be more and more mouths to feed, more and more idiots to house. So it's going to be a cost. And of course, if you're a billionaire and you're always worried that the government is going to come after you and try to take your money away from you, you are very concerned that they're going to come and take
Jeffrey Epstein was
exactly.
the eugenicist.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah.
All right, Tim. About 10 more minutes, George.
Okay. Yeah. We're coming really to an end here.
Eugenics is very seductive. It really had a very strong following in the the first half of the 20th century, big time.
Oh yeah,
and it was normalized too.
That's right. But people like Bill Gates, even today, I mean, they advocate cutting back the population of the world. I mean, it's still it's still in that same form. It's still eugenics. I mean, they don't say it in the way that it was said. Hey, we just think that the inferior races should just not reproduce because then the gene pool is degraded. So he doesn't say it like that. But fundamentally, when Gates and the rest of them talk about we need to reduce population, it's always about the population reduction. It's underlying it is always eugenics.
Yeah, but what is silly about that? We're approaching a point of max population. Now we're going to start having depopulation. And that's what an issue that is going to not in my lifetime, obviously, but the way demographics are moving, it's only a matter of time where they're going to start talking about depopulation.
Well, I think it's already the case. I mean, it's already the case that in many parts of the world, not everywhere, in many parts of the world, is a serious population shortage. China's experiencing a population.
Yes.
But largely as a result of that crazy policy they pursued, the one-child policy, which was bound to end in disaster. How could anyone not think that when you mandate one child, then obviously parents are going to decide, hey, we want a boy, not a girl, because a boy, we can put the boy to work. A girl is just a pain. We're going to have, she gets pregnant and then we have the problem. So they're always going to select boys. And lo and behold, you have a shortage of females. I mean, anybody other than the kind of an idiot communist could have figured that was going to be the consequence. And now they have a serious population shortage. There's a lot of comments here, but
I didn't think the eugenics thing would catch on.
Essie Delandum says all the human rights stuff, when it's explicitly about war, is basically the idea that lawfare and rule by lawsuit is more agreeable to the bourgeois ethos than dueling or guerrilla partisanship, etc. I mean, but of course, the West is very good at doing both. I mean, kind of, waging wars and pretending to be in the business of advocating human rights and and bringing other people to justice.
Because for many in the West, war is an abstraction.
Yes,
it's something that they can't really wrap their heads around. Okay,
right.
And that's one of the reasons we've had some German guests on the program, and George and I have asked repeatedly. I mean, like many times, like, what happened to you guys? Okay, because that generation that remembered is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, Europe. I don't want to go back to the guy that Tucker interviewed, but the history of the Second World War has been very homogenized. And it's actually a very, very complex, not agreeing with the guy that Tucker was talking to. But, what happened in Eastern Europe in the 1930s and early 40s is a lot more complicated than people want to tell you, okay?
Right.
And they want you to forget about that, okay? I mean, the Lithuanians, we've been a free-fighting people, right? No, they didn't like Jews very much either, okay? Okay. Right. And so because you homogenize and sanitize this history, it's something that you don't really reflect upon. I mean, if you ask the average American, what were the major powers? Which side were the major powers on during the Second World War? The young generation simply doesn't know.
Right.
They simply don't know.
Sure. Right.
For me, that's quite astounding, actually.
No, exactly right. Now, there's one question here from our friend Judy Hotchkiss. Thank you very much, Judy, for your generosity. So Judy Hotchkiss says something that was very interesting. It's a news item that I saw today, which is that an Arab American Democrat mayor in Hamtramck, Michigan, Amir Ghalib, just endorsed Trump.
I saw that, but I didn't read the story. So what's the story?
Yeah, that's it. He said Trump is going to end the chaos in the Middle East. He doesn't want wars. Hamtramck is the only town in the U.S. with a full Muslim city council. I have to say, I saw that and I was a little puzzled by it, and I just wonder what really is behind this. I mean, I have to think that a lot of it is just simple disappointment in Biden and Harris, and the fact that that this has been the Biden and Harris who have enabled this war in Gaza, and have basically enabled Israel's actions in Gaza, Israel's actions in Lebanon, and some kind of a resentment, and maybe thinks that Trump will somehow bring it to an end. I'm not sure, but it's nothing. I mean, in none of Trump's statements has he outlined any kind of a plan to bring this war to an end, other than he says, well, Israel needs to finish it. Though he doesn't specify.
Well, over the weekend, he went much further than Israel needs to finish it. It was very, very. I don't remember the name of the group, but it was a Jewish American group, and I think also
that was the American Israel Conference. Yeah.
Well, basically saying, if you don't vote for me, they're going to blame the Jews. That was really weird. Very, very weird. Okay.
Right. I think the argument, yes. Yes. I mean, if you follow the logic of what he was saying, that if you don't vote, look, he's saying, as the polls suggest, he's doing better among Jews than any of his Republican predecessors, but he's still only getting 40% of the Jewish vote. So I guess he's saying, well, basically, if I don't win, then it's because the Jews haven't voted for me, which they should vote for me because I'm the best president Israel has ever had. And so therefore, if the Jews don't vote for me, and I'm not president, then they're going to blame the Jews for not getting me into the Oval Office. It's a strange argument, but it's still a repetition of what he's been saying for some
time. George,
the Jews should support me because I'm the best president Israel has ever had. And if you're not voting for me, then you're not really a Jew.
Yeah, well, it also goes to the fear that many Jews have of goy. I mean, they'll suddenly turn on you. Okay.
Oh, that
sounds like a threat to me.
That's right. But as for this person, I have to think it's just simple anger over Biden and Harris. I mean, this is in Michigan. Michigan was the place where all these uncommitted, there was a large uncommitted vote, and but this uncommitted are now saying that well, we're against Trump. We're not exactly for Harris, but we must keep Trump out. So it's essentially an implicit endorsement of Harris, but not really an explicit endorsement of Harris. But this mayor is clearly not going along with that.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
Well, it made the news because it's such an odd story.
That's right. It is. It's an odd story, and but it's still an interesting thing about I mean, Trump, in his own somewhat primitive way, um, he said something very interesting, which is, "Hey, I've done more for Israel than any president in U.S. history. All the things that I did, other presidents have promised, but didn't deliver. I did it. I delivered for you. You have to deliver for me." And then
Yeah,
they turn around and they don't deliver for him, and then he expresses
yeah,
his anger over that.
yeah, but he falls into his own or a trap that Zionists love to play on all of us. Okay, all Jews are the same. Well, Donald Trump, they're not all the same. They have different points of view on many different things, and he's implicitly saying you're a block of people. You're all the same. Well, he's just simply wrong on
Well,
that.
yes, of course, all Jews are very different, but on the subject of Israel, they're pretty much on the same page, which is all that he's really talking about. I mean, on that subject, there are no Jews. I mean, American Jews. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, Norman Finkelstein, but you can count these people on the fingers of one hand. Most Jews support everything that Israel does. However, they will not vote for Republicans. Even however much Republicans do for them, they will not vote for Republicans. And I think, and that's, I think, is what Trump gets very frustrated.
I'm not sure it's because of Israel. I think it has to do with civil rights movements and things like that. There's a lot of historical reasons why Jews were attracted to the Democratic Party. And I wouldn't say Israel was the number one issue, okay? Then it's returning into that.
No.
And I think that's why a lot of Jews are saying, I mean, no, we're American Jews. We think about American issues.
No,
was a very big issue. Oh, I think so too. I think it's much more, part of their identity is they want to be
exactly. It's part of their identity.
I don't think it has to do with Israel per se. Maybe
no,
it does
I agree. But
we've been through this before.
No, but my point is that the American Jews on Israel, there really are no, Jews in America who are critics of Israel, however much they may say, "Oh, I don't like."
Disagree with you, George. I disagree.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I think that just those people, I mean, even Dershowitz says, "Well, I'm of course against the settlement policy," or that. So they may say that, but in practical terms, they will whatever Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians.
Let's split the difference then with the following. I hope you can agree. Generally speaking, yes, there would be an affinity with Israel. But as you dig deeper, you just mentioned it. Well, the settlements, well, no, I'm not for the settlements. Well, what do you think of these right-wing parties, beating up settlers in the West Bank? Oh, I'm against that too. You see what I mean? I mean,
it's because they're hypocritical. They're hypocritical because they're being hypocritical and they're being thoroughly dishonest. Yeah, if you ask them, do you like Netanyahu? No, I don't like Netanyahu. He's very right-wing. But do you like what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza? Yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
again, I would disagree with you on that. Okay, but the point is, I think Trump should be careful, because that's kind of like you have a nice restaurant here, and be sad something happened to it. I mean, it was very, I don't know. I took it as being a bit ominous, but and desperate.
No. I think he's really feeling very resentful. I mean, I think he feels like I did all this for Israel, and this is what really you do care about. I mean, it's pointless saying that they don't care about it. Of course,
George,
they care passionately about Israel.
That's a 2-hour point, but I want to ask you. I just want to ask you. I think you saw it. I should have sent it to you, but one of the major pollsters came out, said that Trump is looking at a landslide victory. Did you see that?
I did see that. No. That's interesting. I mean, we were obviously, I was going to touch on that, but we don't really have time now. But I think that's interesting. I don't think the polls are looking good for Harris. I mean,
Well, it's interesting because and again, we'll kind of end on this because I have to prepare for my job tomorrow. But this convention of joy, and it seems to be completely deflated right now. With Oprah, with the interview with Oprah, which I saw part of it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not a body language expert, but I mean, Oprah looks supremely unimpressed. I mean,
is that right? I couldn't bring myself to watch. So,
you need, George, you just need to watch 4 minutes of it. That's it. That's it. You're done. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really quite breathtaking. So, but John Fetterman was elected. So I always try to be
Yeah, no,
careful
that's
about
right.
that.
But my view is just simply, if you look at the numbers, the fact that in the battleground states, and that's where the election is going to be decided. In the battleground states, basically, it's a dead heat. And if it's a dead heat, then I don't think Harris is going to win any of those states.
That's Peter and George's polling methodology. If it's a dead heat, it means Trump's up 5.
Exactly. Anyway, I think we now bring this to an end. Thank you, everybody who has joined us. Thank you very much for your comments. And sorry we couldn't get to everybody's comments. There was a lot going on. Thank you above all to the contributors. That's much appreciated. Your generosity is what keeps us going, or rather, what keeps the dogs going. But we're going to be back. We're going to do this again next Monday. And please join us then. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm doing the live stream solo. Please join me then. And remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.